Life of David Livingston, Part 44, Snake Stories. Are proverbially tangled with the colors of the imagination, but the serpents and reptiles of Africa are no jesting topic for the inhabitants. Many of the serpents are particularly venomous. Dr. Livingston states that the Pikaholu is so copiously supplied with poison that when a number of dogs attack it, the first bitten dies almost instantaneously, the second in about 5 minutes, the third in about an hour or so, and the fourth may live several hours. The puff adder and several vipers are very dangerous. There is one which utters a cry by night, exactly like the bleating of a kid. It is supposed by the natives to lure travels to itself by its bleating. Several varieties, when alarmed, emit a particular odor by which their presence is made known. The deadly cobra exists in several colors and varieties. There are various species of tree-climbing serpents which appear to have the power of fascination. This belief of Dr. Livingston in the fascinating power of some serpents is also entertained by Dr. Du Chaillu and avowed as correct by the eminent naturalist Dr. Andrew Smith in his Reptilia. The eminent hunter of the gorilla says the presence of serpents in Africa is a great blessing to the country. They destroy great numbers of rats, mice, and other smaller quadrupeds which injure the native provisions. And it is just to say that they are peacefully inclined and never attack man unless trodden upon. They are glad enough to get away and out of the way. And the most feared snake I saw in Africa was one of the which is very slow in its movements, from which causes it happens that it often bites people more than others, being unable to get out of the way quickly. Those serpents abound in all parts of the country. I have traveled a month at a time without seeing one. The natives, though bare-legged, are rarely bitten, and there are several species of boa which attain great size and weight. The variety known as the natural rock python, which is often seen in interior Africa, though entirely without venom, like other boas, is very destructive of birds and animals. They are perfectly harmless, Dr. Livingston says, and live on small animals, chiefly the rotunda. Occasionally, the steinbuck and paula fall victims and are sucked into the comparatively small mouth of the boa constrictor fashion. The flesh is much relished by Bakalakari and Bushmen. They carry away each his portion like logs of wood over their shoulders. Coming killed one of these boas measuring 14 feet in length. They have been known to measure nearly 13 in length and to capture and swallow half-grown cattle. The Kafra of South Africa is very skillful in slaying the python with his spear. He is thus often pinned to the earth by a single trowel and dispatched at leisure, then cut up into snake logs and carried off for food. Among the innumerable insects of Africa, the fatal tateste fly and the devastating locust have already been mentioned. The most interesting, perhaps, is the ant. It exists in great variety and prodigious numbers. There are countless ant hills in different parts of Africa which are larger than the majority of the individual homes of the natives in the southern and central portions of the continent. Human works to be of the same relative size of these homes of insects would tower over 6 times above the pyramids of Egypt, and would require the base correspondingly large. Among themselves in Africa, some of the species of warriors are and cannibals. They fight their enemies and eat their vanquished. Other species are exceedingly destructive of their timber of the houses, eating out the insides and leaving useless shells. Others consume vast quantities of decaying animal matter, and still others the decaying vegetation, including giant trees of the tropics. Many are exceedingly fierce in nature. Among these is the Bashikoe ant of equatorial Africa. It is perhaps relatively the most vicious of all living things and the most destructive. Unlike the large sized ants, it does not build houses but excavates holes in the earth for place of retreat during storms. Its nature and habits are fully described by Dr. Chalou. This ant is very abundant in the whole region I have traveled over in Africa. It is the dread of all living animals, from the leopard to the smallest insect. It is their habit to march through the forests in a long, regular line, a line about 2 inches broad and often several miles in length. All along this line are larger ants who act as officers, stand outside the ranks and keep this singular army in order. They come to the place where there are no trees to shelter from the sun, whose heat they cannot bear. They immediately build underground tunnels through which the whole army passes in columns to the forest beyond. These tunnels are 4 5 feet underground and are used only in the heat of the day and during a storm. When they get hungry, the long file spreads itself through the forest and front line and attacks and devours all it comes to, and fury which is quite irresistible. The elephant and gorilla fly before its attack. The black men run for their lives. Every animal that lives in their line of Mara is chased. They seem to understand and act upon the tactics of Napoleon and concentrate with great speed their heaviest forces upon the point of attack. In an incredibly short space of time, the mouse, the dog, the leopard, or the deer is overwhelmed, killed, eaten, and their skeleton only remains. They seem to travel night and day. Many a time have been seen awakened out of the sleep and obliged to rush from the hut and into the water to save my life. And after all suffered intolerable agony from the bites of the advance guard, who had got into my clothes when they enter a house and they clear it out of all living things. Roaches are devoured in an instant. Rats and mice spring round the room in vain. An overwhelming force of ants kills a strong rat in less than a minute. In spite of the most frantic struggles, and in less than another minute, its bones are stripped. Everything living in the house is devoured. They will not touch vegetable matter. Thus, they are in reality very useful to the Negroes who have their huts cleansed of all the abounding vermin, such as immense roaches and centipedes, at least several times a year. When on their march, the insect world flies before them, and I have often had the approach of a Bashakwai army heralded to me by this means. Wherever they go, they make a clean sweep, ascending to the tops of the highest trees in pursuit of their prey. Their manner of attack is impetuous leap. Instead, the strong pincers are fastened, and they only let go when a piece gives way. At such times as this little animal seems animated by a kind of fury which causes it to disregard entirely its own safety and to seek only the conquest of its prey. The bite is very painful. The Negroes relate that criminals were in former times exposed in the path of the Baccalaureate ants as much as the most cruel manner of putting them to death. Two very remarkable practices of theirs remain to be related. When on their line of march they must cross a stream, they throw themselves across and form a tunnel, a living tunnel, connecting two trees or high bushes on opposite sides of the little stream. This is done with great speed and is effected by a great number of ants, each of which clings to the other, its fore claws to the next neighbor's body and hind claws. Thus they form a high, safe, tubular bridge through which the whole vast regiment marches in regular order. If disturbed, or if the arch is broken by the violence of some animal, they instantly attack the offender with the greatest animosity. The Bacchushaloi have the sense of smell finely developed, and indeed have all the ants of I know of, and they are guided very much by it. They are larger than any ant we have in America, being at least half an inch long, and are armed with very powerful forelegs and sharp jaws with which they bite. They are red and dark brown in color. Their numbers are so great that one does not like to enter into calculations, but I have seen one continual line passing at good speed in a particular place of 12 hours. The reader may imagine for himself how many millions of millions there may have been contained here. And yet, the ants of Africa are the chief agents employed in forming the fertile soil. But for their labors, remarks Dr. Livingston, the tropical forest, bad as they are now, with fallen trees would be 1,000 times worse. They would be impossible and impassable on account of the heaps of dead vegetation lying on the surface and emitting worse effluvia than comparatively small unburied collections do now. When one looks at the wonderful adaptations throughout creation and the varied operations carried on with such wisdom and skill, the idea of second causes looks clumsy. We are viewing the direct handiwork of Him who is the one and only power of the universe, wonderful in counsel, in whom we all live and move and have our being. There are vast numbers of annoying insects in all portions of the continent, which in this respect perhaps is neither better nor worse than other parts of the world, where little annoyances make up the great sum of human misery. It is only one of many proofs that Africa is the region of contrasts, that the greatest animals flee from the little insect, and the life of scores of whom might be stamped out by a single footstep, yet the aggregate labors of which preserve the continent from desolation and from decay.